Expectations for, I mean, do you expect like Cam to play the Mike, Montgomery at will, Leo? Like, what are your expectations?
Yeah, I think right now, I mean this may be in my 13 years coaching the linebackers. Like this might be the most depth we've had, and probably the most competition that we've had. Some of that stems from just losing three guys last year that were starters. So, there's some open vacancy there, and Jaden's really the only one returning with significant experience. So, in regards to Cam, now Cam's doing a really good job. But I would share this with everybody. Like there's 6 or 7 guys that have really shown up in a significant way. And that started back in January. It really started back in bull prep, and everything up till now has just been an upward arrow in terms of what they've accomplished and what they're doing.
Who would maybe be the other 3 or 4 guys that are sticking?
Yeah, I mean, Landon Van Kerkerks is a young man that's been on our special teams, 4-phase guy for years. So, he's obviously got the game experience. He knows what it feels like to be out there. He knows what it's like to travel each and every week, prepare each and every week. Derek Weiskopf, Preston Reese, Nolan DeLong, and that's really naming, 4 or 5, maybe 5 or 6. But, those guys have really just, they've dug their toes in and they've gone to work each and every day. The room collectively, there's 13 guys in there. They operate extremely well together.
What about Cam has you saying that he's playing really well right now?
Yeah, I think Cam in a lot of ways, much like the other guys in the room, they've benefited from somebody in the room that has demonstrated it at a high level. Whether that be Jaden Montgomery last year, whether that be Jay Higgins from the year before that. It's been a very fortunate pattern that I've had coaching the position, that there's always been 2 or 3 of those guys year in and year out. And Cam's paid real close attention to what's going on. And, I think he's a student of the game. I think he invests extremely well. His time spent is on football and whatever else he does. But quite frankly, he seems like a football buff. And when he goes out there, like he takes total command of the defense, puts everybody in the right places. That's not to say it's a finished piece right now, but at this point in time, I think he's had a real positive impact 8 practices into it.
Question about Jaden Montgomery. When you were recruiting him, obviously not the tallest guy, do you remember what it was about him that made you feel comfortable in offering him?
Coach's kid, leader, tough, and had gone through some adversity. Like his senior year, he told his story, much like we do, throughout the course of fall camp, because you've got some moments in time where, where there's a little bit of downtime. You're with them. This is the most time that we're with our kids throughout the year, without any other distraction. So each one of them, especially the older guys, tells their story. And he told his story the other day, and he rewound it all the way back to coming out of his junior year, going into his senior year of high school. And Jaden didn't necessarily come here on scholarship. He was, back in the day, there was a gray shirt, and that's kind of how Jaden came in. His scholarship kicked in a semester into his freshman year. So it wasn't like we were completely sold, but what sold me on him is what I just shared with you there. And, he's been around the game for a long time. His dad played here. Like, the pieces were there. It's just, and even early on in his career, I wasn't completely sold. I'm not sharing anything that I haven't shared with Jaden or anybody else on the team. Like it was, there was injury. There was, you obviously deal with a little bit of limited height, things of that nature. But, the kid's pushed past every obstacle that's been put in his way, to include walking out on a Big Ten field and being unbelievably productive, as a linebacker and an undersized linebacker. So, but it all rewound back to high school and just, who he was, what he stood for. And I think that's why we're seeing a pretty good product right now.
Billy Wayvoda, kid that enrolled early, and heard a little bit about his effort just being like to the max all the time. What are your impressions of Billy so far?
Yeah, I think Billy has a shared experience. He and Julian Manson came in together. They were my 2 early enrollees back in January, 2 high school kids that made the choice to get out of there early and get to Iowa football. They were roommates when they came in. They're still roommates right now. They feed off of each other. Both of them have done everything we've asked them to do from an off-the-field standpoint. They've handled their business that way, and in return, they've been able to, really just give to football and give to this experience, which, they're still both very green, but they do feed off of each other. They compete against each other. They had to do that out here on the field in the weight room during January all the way to the spring, and then in a lot of cases they're partnered up together when we do our individual drills. So